welcome to the Weekly Rushes. Excuse my strained vocal cords. It's just from hacking and coughing, and if I have a coughing fit, I'll cut it out so you won't have to listen to it. Welcome to the Weekly Rushes. Obviously, your rushed rush through all the weekly movie and streaming news. It's been about 3 weeks, so of course stories have been backing up left, right and centre. Casting stories, new projects, court cases, you name it, all sorts of stuff on screen, off screen, and nowhere near the screen. So what's our first big story then? Well, the first big story that you can't really ignore this week is the Kevin Spacey trial. It's the case that Anthony Rapp brought a $40 million sexual battery lawsuit against the actor Kevin Spacey. It pivots around the accusation that Anthony Rapp made that when he was just 14, allegedly at a sort of after drinks or after theatre show party or something, Kevin Spacey allegedly lifted him up and pushed himself on him in a predatory sexual assault manner. I mean, Kevin Spacey has become very conflated with the, obviously, part of the #MeToo movement, alongside the whole Harvey Weinstein case. This was a civil case, so this was about damages. This wasn't a criminal case. A little bit like the Johnny Depp Amber Heard case. It was about money, it was about damages, etc. But of course, it's also about reputation beyond the court case. There was an interesting sort of evolution to the court case. Kevin Spacey talked about his own involvement with drinks and drugs. Rather bizarrely and surprisingly, I didn't realise this, the name John Barrowman crept in. John Barrowman was a friend when he was 19 of Anthony Rapp, the young actor or aspirant actor who was bringing the case against Kevin Spacey. And apparently the three of them went out on a night out to the Limelight Club. God, that's going back some. And Anthony Rapp was there apparently, you know, when John Barrowman and Kevin Spacey. So Kevin Spacey talked about fancying John Barrowman and him and John Barrowman having a bit of a moment. So there was quite a lot of kind of detail given there. Kevin Spacey spoke for the first time in public, broke down on the stand talking about his neo-Nazi sort of homophobic father and how the trauma of that kind of has led to all sorts of kind of issues for him in his life. I mean, I've mentioned this before and no one else seems to sort of talk about this a lot, but does anyone else remember that curious story that was in the press about Kevin Spacey being bruised and smashed up in the face, and, you know, allegedly after a sort of an incident or an altercation or something in Hampstead Heath or something like that. So yeah, obviously he struggled with coming out. So what was the long and the short of it? Well, the jury, in a unanimous jury decision, after just 80 minutes of deliberating, threw the case out of the window. They basically said, no, this isn't the case. Anthony Rapp doesn't have a case here. And so Kevin Spacey, in a sense, was essentially exonerated of this. This is the first of a number of trials. He's facing three counts. He faces charges in London from 3 men, that's right, for sexually assaulting them whilst he was the creative director of the Old Vic Theatre in London. He's got that coming. I think that happens in June 2023. And he's also got a case that the producers of House of Cards have brought against him, where they're suing him for $31 million damages. I suppose, in a weird way, he'll deal with the damages to the producers of House of Cards last, because I guess if all of these other cases fall away, or if he wins the other cases, he'll have a strong argument to say that perhaps the accusations or the investigations that were conducted on the House of Cards set are themselves also potentially faulty too. So yeah, so Kevin Spacey essentially in his first court case has been cleared. But it seems that this spectre of inappropriate behaviour it reaches towards all of those characters, and it's always that challenging moment when it reaches towards sort of famous faces or names that one's liked or one's loved. I mean, I used to love Woody Allen films, but now of course you wouldn't go near him with a barge pole. You know, so when you have a name or someone whose name keeps, you know, a name that keeps coming up in relationship to allegations of bad behaviour, it's frustrating. It's disappointing, but at the same time you can't deny it. And the next actor there seems to be an increasing number of cases being mentioned or brought against him, in a sense, is Bill Murray, the star of Ghostbusters, the stand-up comedian. You know, the guy, the Groundhog Day, Scrooged, was it? You know, he's a cracking actor, very funny actor. Obviously starred in Lost in Translation, Sofia Coppola. Stars in a lot of Wes Anderson's films. The film set Being Mortal, his latest film project, Being Mortal, which is the film which is based upon the real-life experiences of a surgeon. I believe he was playing the surgeon. They've had to close down production on that. He allegedly sat or straddled himself across the lap of this female cast member or crew member, and then he had a COVID mask on, and then he's proceeded to try and kiss her. And obviously the woman felt this was inappropriate, has made a complaint. Production was stopped. They've literally stopped the shoot. They've stopped production, and there's a lot of talk about the fact that it possibly won't come back. Bill Murray, in his defence, has, I think, settled with a $100,000 settlement with the actress or the person in question, but that doesn't seem to have removed this. I think he, this is an out-of-court settlement. This is him just kind of trying to, I think, maybe silence her, to shut her up. He said, I did something I thought was funny, and it wasn't taken that way. The company, the movie studio, wanted to do the right thing, so they wanted to check it all out, investigate it. They stopped the production, but as of now, we're talking with the actress and we're trying to make peace with each other. I think that's where the real issue is. But since production has stopped on Being Mortal, other stories have started to come out. Saturday Night Live alumni Rob Schneider talked about how Bill Murray, when he came onto as a guest host, he wasn't very nice to anyone on set. Apparently, he says he hated us on Saturday Night Live when he hosted. Absolutely hated us. I mean, he was seething. Another comedian actor, Seth Green, spoke about how he had an altercation with Murray when he was just 9 years old. He was a 9-year-old boy. He was on set. He was to be in a scene. He was sat on the wrong end of a sofa that Bill Murray was going to sit on. Bill Murray asked him to move. Bit precocious, perhaps, as a 9-year-old. Bill Murray picked him up by his foot, hung him over a dustbin, dropped him in the trash, and said, if you're going to act like trash, this is where the trash is going to go. Lucy Liu, obviously, many years ago, talked about how Bill Murray went into a pent-up rage and screamed at her on set and really kind of gave her a dressing down in front of all of the other actors, and described that some of the language that Murray used as inexcusable and unacceptable. But the latest, I mean, it carries on. I mean, and this is you start to sort of hear and see a pattern. You think, oh Christ, we can't ignore this. Gina Davis, the wonderful actress Gina Davis, she was talking about when she was in her new memoir, Dying of Politeness. She talks about when she was working with Bill Murray on a movie called Quick Change in 1990, how when she first met him, he insisted on using a massage machine. I think one of those ones that goes boom, 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 boom on her back multiple times, and she kept insisting, please don't do it, and he refused to stop. She talks about how he screamed at her too on set in front of over 300 people on the film set. And she also described the awkwardness of a scene or an interview she did on the Arsenio Hall show, which, well, rather than describing it, why don't we watch it? Because she talked, interestingly, in an interview recently about how she kind of, when predatory behaviour is happening, lots of women are put under duress to kind of like laugh it off or normalise it or kind of go with it even. And then, of course, if you then retrospectively kind of criticise it, there's the suggestion that, but you seemed comfortable with it. You kind of went with it. It was all right. It doesn't mean that. You're going with it because of the power, if you like, of the man doing it. So let's watch this. This is the clip of him and Gina Davis on the Arsenio Hall show.
I heard, and this might be wrong, you had to read for this? Did he make you read for this?
Yeah, I did. I had to audition.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. It was a lot like this, in fact, yeah.
Really? He touched you a lot in the audition?
Yeah.
Are you serious?
No, I swear. The first thing he did was, like, take my shirt out of my pants and start tickling my stomach. It's like
Is this a story you want to tell? Maybe,
I'm not sure. Can we, like, back up?
If Jeff is watching, he might not like
it's all cool with Jeff. What we have is so strong.
I mean, again, you can sort of see there at the beginning, she invites him over to set, but you don't know what the power relationship is and what he was, obviously a big star, maybe a bigger star than her. And she talks about how awkward it was and how awful it was and how uncomfortable she felt about that. I mean, there's even a story that the director of Charlie's Angels, Bill Murray, headbutted. So Bill Murray in the firing line, is he going to be cancelled? Are we looking yet again at sort of historic tales from an era? Is this about a change in taste and decency, a change in acceptable behaviour? Is this dated behaviour, or is this something more sinister? What do you think, guys? Share your thoughts below. Almost from the same stable, if you like, obviously Bill Murray being a star of Ghostbusters, Anna Faris, the actress, has been talking in a podcast with Lena Dunham about the experience that she had while shooting the 2006 romantic comedy, My Super Ex-Girlfriend. She talked about the fact that the director of that then film, Ivan Reitman, who obviously has sadly passed away in the last 2 years, he was the director of the original Ghostbusters films. His son, Jason Reitman, went on to direct the new Ghostbusters film. Anna Faris talked about how, whilst on set, Ivan Reitman slapped my ass during the production on her first day, yelled at her, leaving her feeling angry, hurt, and humiliating. Faris said, one of my hardest film experiences was with Ivan Reitman. I mean, the idea of attempting to make a comedy under this like reign of terror. He was a yeller. He would bring down somebody every day, and my first day, it was me. What a horrible way to run a film set, isn't it? Through terror and arrogance and misogyny and control and just temperamentalism. I mean, I'm not suggesting this is what happened at all on the set of Don't Worry Darling, but reading between the lines, you know, the way in which Florence Pugh was kind of thrown under the bus a bit by Olivia Wilde, the suggestion being that she couldn't contend with Shia LaBeouf's quite confrontational style of acting. Yeah, I can see how different actors need different methods to kind of get to the place where they're performing a part, but not to the detriment of others. And also with directors, you don't need to direct by control. You can direct by negotiation. You know, sometimes I think the worst kind of direction is to sort of literally direct in a demonstrative fashion. She also went on to say, I remember the same director, Ivan Reitman, telling my agent I had great legs, and that was one of the reasons I got hired. And she goes on to say, look, that's a great compliment. I like my legs, but it kind of informed my whole experience of the project. It goes back to this idea of if you're employed for just your looks, do you get, you know, how unacceptable it is to then be treated as kind of, you know, a warm prop, as they say, a sort of warm, movable, abusable prop. Francis Ford Coppola is, as we've reported before here, is making his $100 million self-financed epic, long gestating, tone poem called Megalopolis. He's added new members to the cast, new people to the cast. He's got Chloe Fineman from Saturday Night Live. He's added Isabel Kussman from Licorice Pizza. Dustin Hoffman, Oscar winner Dustin Hoffman is in there. They're joining an already stellar cast with Adam Driver, Forrest Whitaker, Game of Thrones is Natalie Emmanuel, Shia LaBeouf is in there, John Voight is in there, Lawrence Fishburne, Talia Shire. I mean, it's a mammoth cast, and you can't help but feel that this is sort of stretching towards Godfather-esque epic proportions. When you read the logline, I can see why he perhaps hasn't got this away with the studio. It's not entirely clear what the grab is, nor what the urgency to watch it will be. Because the logline on this is, the fate of Rome haunts a modern world unable to solve its own social problems in an epic story of political ambition, genius and dangerous love. It's one of those sort of nebulous, oblique, incredibly general, highly ambitious but not specific kind of loglines that makes you think, well, wow, but what? Francis Ford Coppola himself says, I thought this was an interesting quote from, he's a sensational director, and he has a fair point in his own words. What's the worst that can happen to me? Am I going to die and be broke? That I'm confident that if you can make a film that people can keep getting something out of for 10, 20 or more years, you won't lose money in the end. No, true, but I mean, he's quite old now, so he won't see the money on this film. I look at my movies, they're all being looked at 50 years later, and that is a fair, successful point. His films are sensationally rewatchable, and they do stand the measure of time. As he says, my films, the more weird my films are, the longer they seem to last. And I think on that basis alone, we need to applaud old Francis Ford Coppola. He's chucking all his own money in there. It's his own risk, his own gamble. So that's Megalopolis. Its cast is deepening, and its epic reach is still as ambitious as it was before. Okay, guys, there are some stars who kind of generate really strong sort of responses, and then there are those that you sort of go, and then you go, I don't know what I think about him. Jared Leto, Dallas Buyers Club. I mean, he was phenomenal in that. He obviously won an Oscar. He was beautiful. I didn't realise he was that as old as he was when he kind of came to fame and won the Oscar for that. Jared Leto, he was recently in Moebius, the kind of Marvel superhero vampire thing. It was a bit weird. He was really odd. I mean, he was eminently watchable, but for all the wrong reasons in A House of Gucci. He's a curious character. He's a sort of fashion icon. He's a kind of musician-y type. He's kind of more than just an actor, if you know what I mean. Well, Jared Leto is to star as Karl Lagerfeld in a biopic of the fashion icon designer's life. Karl Lagerfeld, for me, is sort of fashion world's answer to Andy Warhol. I had the odd experience of shooting an interview with him many years ago, and we put a microphone on him, and his assistant said, you don't need to put a microphone on him. And I was like, well, we do, because we need to hear him. He said, he's not going to talk. We said, what do you mean he's not going to talk? So he didn't talk, but his assistant did. So he didn't need a microphone, but we had to film him. We asked the questions, but his assistant answered off camera. It was the most bizarre. I don't even know if the interview got used in the end. It was so strange. Anyway, Jared Leto's to star in and produce a movie about the acclaimed fashion designer Karl Lagerfeld. As Jared Leto says, Karl has always been an inspiration to me, a true polymath, an artist, an innovator, a leader, and importantly, a kind man. He was also quite a silent man. He was very, very strange. You know, obviously, sadly, he died in February 2019. This will be made with the assistance and help. I think it would, you know what, I think this could be interesting. This could be something that kind of revitalises the Jared Leto star machine, if you like. Because, I mean, Karl Lagerfeld is odd. I think it needs to be... Again, the worry with all these biopics, as soon as you have the estate involved, it becomes a very sort of manicured and it's sort of, you know, I don't know, sort of safe storytelling exercise. Karl Lagerfeld with those glasses, incredibly odd character. Jared Leto's an incredibly odd character. All to go for. Strange, weird, odd, Andy Warhol-esque story to be told. Are you a fan of camp, kitsch, odd, weird, slapped up, weird movies? John Waters, that great master of kitsch filmmaking, Pink Flamingos and Hairspray and stuff like that. It's been 18 years. I mean, this is someone else I actually had the great fortune of interviewing John Waters at the Cannes Film Festival years ago, and he was sensationally good fun. I can't remember what film it was for, but he was incredibly good fun. He was obviously responsible for launching the career of the drag queen Divine. It's been 18 years since he's made a film. His last film was in 2004, A Dirty Shame, and he's written a book called Liarmouth. They've decided in writing this book, he's written a story, which is the full title is Liarmouth, a feel-bad romance. It's so good. He's such a rule breaker. He's so offbeat. He's so odd. He's so kooky. I just remember I loved how eccentric he was and how passionate he was about the films that he was making, and just he is a manifestation of cult, John Waters. But just to give you a grab on what this story is about, it sounds great. It follows a character called Marcia Sprinkle, who's a suitcase thief, a scammer, and a master of disguise. Dogs and children hate her. Her own family want her dead. She's smart, she's desperate, she's disturbed, and she's on the run with a huge chip. Probably in a John Waters film, a huge chip on her shoulder. It could well be a literal chip. But they call her Liarmouth until one insane man makes her tell the truth. So it's going to be a film of this. I think this could be absolutely fantastic. John Waters says, I'm thrilled to be back in the movie business, hopefully to spread, I love this, demented joy to adventuresome moviegoers around the world. And that's what he does. He takes you... I don't know if you remember, is it Pink Flamingos where Divine ate dog shit, I think, in the actual film? I think that was right. Nicholas Hoult. The kids in our household are huge fans of Nicholas Hoult. We've talked a lot about Robert Eggers, the director of The Witch, The Lighthouse, The Northman. His new film is going to be a retelling or remaking of Nosferatu. It looks like Nicholas Hoult is going to be joining the production. I think he's a good fit if you think that Robert Pattinson and Willem Dafoe and Anya Taylor-Joy have all kind of worked with Robert Eggers. This is a new reimagining of the gothic sort of vampiric tale about a young woman who's going to be played by Lily Rose Depp in 19th century Germany, and the ancient Transylvanian vampire played by Bill Skarsgård, who was Pennywise, we talked about that before, stalking her. So it's going to be a modern retelling. Maybe it's going to be in black and white, it's going to be grainy, whatever. But Nicholas Hoult, he's fabulously odd. He was brilliant in the Ned Kelly Gang film recently. Horrible, really good villain in that. He's obviously been nominated for an Emmy for his part as Peter III. Huzzah! In The Great. And he's soon to be seen in the brilliantly sort of offbeat comedy/horror The Menu, in which Ralph Fiennes plays clearly quite a malevolent sort of high-end chef. So that's Nicholas Hoult. He brings so much range and complexity and oddness to nearly every performance that he plays. This is an odd one. Christos, thank you for sending me the story. Obviously, I saw it too, but Liam Neeson starring in a Naked Gun reboot. Now, the Naked Gun films were brilliant. They spun out of the same stable that David Zucker and the Abrahams brothers gave us. They gave us Airplane and all that kind of stuff. Leslie Nielsen, didn't he? He kind of immortalised the iconic kind of character of Detective Frank Drebin. Airplane has still stood the test of time, and to be honest, I haven't watched the Naked Gun films. I mean, is it the Naked Gun films where there's that moment where they push, is it O.J. Simpson in a wheelchair down the sort of, he goes down the steps and then is fired off into, they're stupid. They're batshit crazy, batshit stupid and fun. They're going to reboot them. I'm not entirely convinced by this. Liam Neeson apparently is going to be playing Detective Frank Drebin's son. It's not going to be like the same character. Liam Neeson was essentially going to be Leslie Nielsen's son, carrying on in a new film. I'm not convinced about Liam Neeson's comedy chops. I mean, I think he's an underestimated actor. I think he's been kind of marginalised and sort of just kind of typecast as a sort of action hero guy. So maybe this is the opportunity to really see him do something different. He was apparently in Extras. I never saw that. He did have a role in the Lego Movie too. But I can't say I can immediately see this one zinging. I think I would imagine someone with a bit more natural comedy and surreal comedy. It's all about timing with the Naked Gun films and Airplane, and it's all about timing. And Leslie Nielsen was supremely good with that blank expression. Agatha Christie, my mother is an Agatha Christie fan. I'm going to just put it out there. Sometimes people are just too polite on there. I find Agatha Christie really fucking boring. I just find it all so predictable. And I find it almost like, I find Agatha Christie stories or films or shows or series, they're so uninterested in any emotional complexity. It's almost like storytelling just for the sake of storytelling. It's almost like just problem solving. It's like here's a conundrum, solve it, or here's an equation, work it out, or here's a list of kind of things. I don't know. It's more like a quiz. It's more like I don't find them engaging. I don't care. I don't care who done it. And I know that I'm going to be taking up so many blind alleys and cul-de-sacs, and I don't care. Anyway, Kenneth Branagh clearly disagrees. He's obviously all the Murder on the Orient Expresses, and his Poirot with a most remarkably ludicrous moustache. I mean, I think, it's getting so wide that even CinemaScope won't be able to cope with it. He's assembled yet another A-list cast for a new Agatha Christie called A Haunting in Venice. He's reprising, obviously, his role as Hercule Poirot. He's also going to direct the picture too. It's based on Agatha Christie's story or book or novella or whatever called Halloween Party. And the logline is this: now retired and living in self-imposed exile, Poirot reluctantly attends a séance at a decaying haunted palazzo. When one of the guests is murdered, quelle surprise, the detective is thrust into a sinister world of shadows and secrets. Could be interesting if it's a bit more horror-y, but it just never... I don't know, I can't be arsed. One of our most favourite films, I can't remember when it was released, was it 2 years ago? It's just before the pandemic, was a movie called Uncut Gems starring Adam Sandler. Now, when I say it's a really good film, if you go and watch this now off the back of this, it's a very abrasive film. Adam Sandler plays a very unlikable character. It's shot in a very sort of rushed, abrasive, handheld. It doesn't invite you in. It's not easy watching. You have to persist with it. As I said to the girls, stick with it, and they ended up loving it. It's one of those films where you have a really unlikable main character, but you're rooting for him throughout. And Adam Sandler, I think, was terribly overlooked by all of the kind of award ceremonies. He deserved something for his performance in Uncut Gems. Well, that film was made by the Safdie brothers, and the Safdie brothers, Benny and Josh Safdie, are pulling together a new project. There's very little known about it, but it's going to star Adam Sandler again, and this is something I think to be excited about. They are very interesting filmmakers. The Safdie brothers were also producers behind a recent indie film called Funny Pages. Go and check out the review. Not many people are going to go and see it, but they should. Again, abrasive, unlikable characters, but interesting filmmaking. By all accounts, the suggestion is that this film could be about the world of high-end card collecting. That sounds interesting. Could it be baseball cards? Is it going to be Pokemon cards? What's it going to be about? So, again, sort of hijinks. Is it going to be sort of, a bit of criminality in there? Deals, bets, all that malarkey. Lots of people hate Adam Sandler. I don't understand why. I find him a very agreeable. And as I say, I think if they can give him a really deep, meaty role, yet again, could we see Adam Sandler on the awards ceremony circuit? Reported this last week, Harrison Ford is at the grand old age of 81. Harrison Ford has not only Indiana Jones 5, which obviously is about to come out soon, not only Star Wars, Han Solo, all that malarkey, he's now going to star in he's joining the MCU, he's joining the Marvel Cinematic Universe. He's going to be joining the new Captain America film, starring Anthony Mackie, as General Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross, who's also known as Red Hulk, who was also originally, obviously, played by William Hurt, who passed away, I think, last year. Imagine hitting your dream gig at Marvel at 81. He's going to be he's first going to be appearing in the Captain America New World Order. The plot for that's been kept under wraps. That's evolved out of the Falcon and the Winter Soldier Disney Plus series. Anthony Mackie is now the new incumbent Captain America. And there's also talk, obviously, there's a Thunderbolts film coming starring the likes of Florence Pugh and David Harbour. So presumably he will also be in that too. So that's Harrison Ford. He's a mainstay, isn't he? He's like, for me, he's like my cinematic father figure. Sydney Sweeney, she's going to be, get used to that name, Sydney Sweeney. Obviously, most people will know her from Euphoria. They'll also know her from The White Lotus. We couldn't get on with The White Lotus, though I might secretly try it again. When Nadia doesn't like something, she comes down pretty harsh in the first episode, and then we tend not to find the time to watch it again. But I think I might go back to The White Lotus. Some of you have said it's good. She's producing and starring in a reboot or a remake or a revisit, if you like, of Barbarella. Curious, isn't it? In an age when Barbarella was really a sort of sci-fi sexploitation film back in 1968 that starred Jane Fonda, was directed by Roger Vadim. I think they might have been married. I think she might have been married to the director, which could explain to some extent why she took part in something where she was very much a sort of sexualized, sexy. I mean, I have to confess, I remember as a young boy seeing posters or images of Barbarella, and it was extraordinarily exciting. It was that sort of strange 70s kind of, wow, look at all this sci-fi kit on this woman and all these furry kind of carpets that she's lying in and all that kind of stuff. This film is going to be based on Jean-Claude Forest's French comic book of the same name, which obviously the original film was based on too. And yes, Sydney Sweeney is going to be starring as her. She's going to be big, Sydney Sweeney. She's also going to be in the new Marvel, Sony side of Marvel, Sony Marvel Spider-Man spin-off film, Madam Web, almost a sort of female Spider-Girly, Spider-Woman type thing. This is a big casting story. This is a big story, actually. This broke kind of just last night. Angelina Jolie, she's directing her 5th film at the moment. I think obviously she's been caught up in this huge hoo-ha, this, the sort of court case between her and Brad Pitt. They're fighting over who can have how they split the sort of economic assets of a vineyard or some kind of, it's a sort of property. They're having an argument over splitting up a business, a property, or a vineyard or something. But in the process, they're just hurling all sorts of shit at each other about behaviour on the infamous flight where allegedly Brad Pitt choked one of her children at the neck, threw her around, drank too much, passed out, and all the rest of it. So she's kind of dealing with that on one side. She's also finishing up on her directing a 5th film. She's obviously a director, she's a producer, she's a United Nations ambassador, all that kind of stuff. Well, it's just been announced that she's been cast to portray the opera singer Maria Callas. And this is going to be interesting because this is a project that's been written. I mean, Stephen Knight, the guy who gave us Peaky Blinders, he's a busy man, isn't he? He's written this. It's also being directed by Pablo Larraín, who directed Spencer, the recent Princess Diana film starring Kristen Stewart. Pablo Larraín also made Jackie, which was the film about Jackie Onassis, which also starred Natalie Portman. So this is going to be a sort of a third tragic female figure coming from this director. Based on true accounts, the logline for this is it will tell the tumultuous, beautiful and tragic story of the world's greatest opera singer, relived and reimagined during her final days in 1970s Paris. As I say, it's written by Stephen Knight to star Angelina Jolie. A new documentary is in the works all about, talk about just focusing on one thing. It's not about Michael Jackson. It's not about the drama around it. This is a documentary just about Michael Jackson's Thriller album. Obviously, it was the biggest and still is the biggest selling album of all time. The numbers are ludicrous. It sold 34 million copies in the US alone and an estimated 100 million copies worldwide. The album alone won 8 Grammy Awards. It gave him 7 top 10 singles, and it was released 40 years ago, almost to the day this month. Of course, the album spawned so many famous tracks, one of them being Billie Jean as well. And so this film will take us back to that time, how he recorded the album, its impact, its cultural significance. Don't forget that there were the incredibly groundbreaking pop videos that were made. Do you remember the sort of the werewolfian sort of thriller video directed by John Landis, all around the time of An American Werewolf in London, all that kind of stuff. This is going to be quite a sort of nostalgic 80s fest, I think, which is going to be entertaining. Billie Jean, which is one of the singles on the album, remains one of the most streamed Michael Jackson songs of all time. And Thriller is the only music video, get this, that's been inducted into the elite National Film Registry of the Library of Congress. It's seen as such a significant moment in pop video filmmaking and all what have you. So a documentary of Michael Jackson's Thriller, regardless of what you think of Michael Jackson, I think it's a cultural moment, and I think that will be quite interesting. I'd quite like to watch that. Any huge Kelsey Grammer FRASIER fans? My nan loved FRASIER. She used to watch it in the mornings in her room while she had a cup of tea and a bit of marmalade on toast. FRASIER, that kind of quick-witted American comedy, we like, and I don't feel there's enough of them anymore. I was watching something the other day, The Big Bang Theory. It didn't do it for me at all. I didn't laugh once. A sequel to Frasier is coming. Paramount Plus have picked up a sequel. Kelsey Grammer has been wanting to do something like this for a while. He's going to be executive producing it. He's reprising his character, his signature psychiatrist turned radio host, Frasier Crane. There aren't too many details about this. Apparently Frasier's going to be popping up in a new city, and a little bit like Frasier was an original spin-off. Do you remember from Cheers? He was a subsidiary character in Cheers, and then they spun off Frasier. And in that first series of Frasier, characters from Cheers would kind of come across. There's talk about the fact that characters from the original series of Frasier, or the original manifestation of Frasier, will guest in this new iteration of Frasier. Obviously, some actors won't. I think the actor who played his father has sadly passed away. But I personally think this could be good. I hope it's a return to form. He is quite sensational, Kelsey Grammer. That droll, deadpan, almost sort of inability to really understand the social mores of life. I just thought it was a fantastically well-drawn character. More TV and streaming news. The Wicker Man. I mean, The Wicker Man is going to be turned into a series. Almost 50 years since it was released. Andy Serkis, the man who was obviously Gollum, who's directed some of the Planet of the Apes films. He directs all sorts of things. I think he directed did he direct the most recent Venom film as well, starring Tom Hardy? They're turning The Wicker Man into a TV series. Obviously, the original film starred Edward Woodward and Christopher Lee. I think they head out to the Outer Hebrides or something, a Hebridean island, and then they get caught up in all sorts of cult and kind of Celtic gods and prayers and sacrifices and rituals and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, they're gonna explore the same themes of sacrifice, superstition, and ritual that were at the core of the original film. But I think this is going to be set in a much more modern setting, and they're going to pull those themes up and sort of plonk them in the now. I think that could be good. I mean, again, it does beg the question: why does it have to be a series based on the Wicker Man? Why can't we just have something which is about sacrifice, superstition, and ritual? I wonder if research shows that it will be watched more if people are told it's like the Wicker Man than if it was just something created from scratch. I mean, there's got to be the reason for this constant mining of old intellectual property and ideas has to come around, has to have something to do with the idea that you're going to inherit some of the original cult audience, surely. I said there was a lot of news this week. I said there's a lot of news landing. A lot of it's streaming news. Dune, the Sisterhood, is taking a step forward. This is the TV series, HBO's spin-off series from the Dune films. I think this could be quite rich. I think this could be a sort of sci-fi-esque Game of Thrones win or hit for HBO. They've shored up there. It's a sort of feminist, female-skewing aspect, the Dune aspect of the kind of Dune universe, if you like, Dune the Sisterhood. They've cast Emily Watson, who is always good, and Shirley Henderson, who's fantastic. She's a fantastic actress, Shirley Henderson. She's obviously been in Harry Potter films. She crops up in, I think she was in Happy Valley, the first series of Happy Valley. This series is based on the Frank Herbert classic novel, but it's set 10,000 years before the story of Paul Atreides, the Timothée Chalamet story. Two very strong women. I think great to get some sci-fi where, the protagonists, the heroes, the lead heroes are strong women, and it's almost a reverse of The Handmaid's Tale, isn't it? They are representatives of a secret organisation of women who will go on to become the Bene Gesserit. Ooh. So I think that will be good. I think this will be good. Emily Watson, Shirley Henderson, they'll give that some real anchorage. Julianne Moore. Are you a fan of Julianne Moore? I'm not entirely sure whether she's still a box office draw or a draw at all. I mean, she's a fabulous actress, but she's almost so ethereal. You don't really know what she's in anymore. She sort of just floats through things, doesn't she? Anyway, Julianne Moore, she's leading a new drama. This sounds interesting for AMC, called Mary and George. This is a series in which Julianne Moore is playing Mary Villiers, who is otherwise known as the Countess of Buckingham. In the 17th century England, she moulded her beautiful son George to seduce King James I and become his all-powerful lover. This is based on a true story. This is coming from, it's partly created by D.C. Moore, who was behind Killing Eve, but this is the story of a mother-son relationship, if you like, a sort of historic 17th century mother-son relationship, Julianne Moore and her son, as they became, through their scheming, they perhaps became one of the richest, most titled and most influential mother and son combos England has ever seen in history. So I think that sounds interesting. It's nice to find something that's a bit period drama, a bit sort of ancient and a bit historic, with a different agenda rather than just being about kings and queens. This is obviously going to be about gender politics, about sexual orientation, homosexuality around the time, all that kind of stuff. So I think this could be rich. Very exciting news. Martin Scorsese obviously was the head behind Boardwalk Empire. He's now apparently he's going to be flipping Gangs of New York. into a high-profile TV series. His movie Gangs of New York obviously starred Daniel Day-Lewis and what have you, and Leonardo DiCaprio. They're turning this into a series based, again, on Herbert Asprey's 1927 non-fiction book. Martin Scorsese is going to be executive producing the series, like he did Boardwalk Empire. He's apparently, it's suggested that he's going to be directing the first 2 episodes too. It's going to be a new take on the story, a new take on that era. Gangs of New York is set in the mid to late 1800s, so it's parked very much before the Boardwalk Empire series idea, or the Al Capone and all that kind of stuff. This is much earlier iteration of New York and Manhattan and what have you. And this is all about the sort of the mafia and the origin story, if you like, of the Italian-American mafia of the 1920s. It finds its origins all in the sort of mid to late 1800s. And I think Gangs of New York, this is a rich, this could be one of those series that runs and runs and runs, a bit like Boardwalk Empire that starred Steve Buscemi. I think this has real potential to be epic in reach and just be a returning series. I mean, there's going to be so many narratives that you could pursue. And another little addendum from Netflix here, Netflix have agreed to put a fictional disclaimer at the front of The Crown Season 5. We've talked about this a lot on the channel. Judi Dench has gone a little bit mad about it too, saying it's a crude and crass kind of fictional representation of people who are still alive. So Netflix has added a disclaimer to the Crown trailer. If you look in the YouTube description beneath it, Netflix now states, inspired by real events, this fictional dramatization tells the story of Queen Elizabeth II and the political and personal events that shaped her reign. I think there's an added piquancy to this, and there's sort of added urgency to this being done, because of course we are now The Crown. These are the first episodes of The Crown being shot and broadcast after the passing away of Queen Elizabeth. So there's an increased level of sensitivity around this. I mean, Harry is re-editing his book. The Prince Harry Meghan series on Netflix is being tweaked too. Maybe Harry's asked them to put this on. You never know. Maybe Prince Harry has actually had a word in Netflix's shell-like. And all this, of course, coming off the back of Judi Dench describing the show as indulging in crude sensationalism. So finally, Netflix have listened, and they are going to be essentially putting the fictional disclaimer beneath or in front of The Crown. All of which brings us to films of the week. And the films of the week this week are at the cinema, All Quiet on the Western Front. We did a trailer reaction to this. This is going to be an incredibly searing, emotional, difficult, challenging, gritty portrait of war that doesn't take sides. It's going to be looking at it neither from the French, nor the German, nor the British, though, I mean, obviously it's based on a German book, and it's going to be a sort of warts and all glimpse of, again, I don't think you can get too many films about World War I from the perspectives of those soldiers who were in the trenches. So I think it's going to, there's a lot of chatter and a lot of excitement around the way it's been shot. It's epic in scale, epic in execution. All Quiet on the Western Front, I think, will be quite thought-provoking, but also, it's a war movie, but it will be a very emotional watch. So if you're a superhero fan, obviously the big release of this week is Black Adam. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson finally manages to deliver on the superhero film he's wanted to do for so many years. Question marks do sort of hover over this as to why Black Adam, other than it being Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's absolute desire to kind of make it. Our review of the film is on the channel too. As I say, it's an origin story, and it's an origin story with a surprising political context for me. I thought that it had some interesting cultural political observations. It's very much a conventional comic book superhero film. It's the old style DC. You're not looking for layers of darkness. You're not looking for layers of kind of, psychological personality, kind of all that kind of stuff. This is a kind of entertaining romp. So if you're up for kind of just taking the kids, getting a bowl of popcorn and just going, watch it on a big screen, always sit right at the front. You don't have to pay for IMAX if you go and sit at the front of any cinema. It's like IMAX. The film of the week I'm most excited about, if I'm honest, is The Banshees of Inisherin. This is the new film. Is it the 4th film by Martin McDonagh? He did In Bruges. He did 3 Billboards. He did 7 Psychopaths. Lots of people talk about 7 Psychopaths being his failure. For me, 7 Psychopaths is one of my favourite films. It's so fucking funny. He does dark humour. This film stars Brendan Gleeson and Colin Farrell. Obviously, they were together in Bruges. This is an unlikely film, but apparently a surprisingly thought-provoking, emotional, poignant comedy that reflects on loneliness, belonging, friendship, through the lens of these two guys who are friends, and their friendship kind of takes a strange turn. The reviews coming through for this film are saying this is literally a filmic piece of art. So I'm really looking forward to this. I think there's going to be a dark sense of humour. Apparently Colin Farrell looks like he's in line for all sorts of kind of Oscar nominations and all sorts of things. Going to be a fascinating portrait of a friendship in decline or under pressure. And as with some of the greatest comedies, dark comedies, it's going to probably riff on so many other bigger themes whilst being quite silly also at the same time. A new Korean film out this week, which is being touted as could this be the new Parasite in terms of, not in terms of necessarily subject matter, but because it's Korean essentially, but also potentially quite complex, clever, thought-provoking kind of narrative. It's a thriller, essentially a thriller. It's directed by Park Chan-wook, who obviously gave us Old Boy and other such classics. And this is about a detective who goes into the mountains to investigate the death of a man, and then something curious develops between him and the dead man's wife. It becomes a bit odd, a bit weird. The trailer looks incredibly sort of intriguing, all sorts of riffs on what it means to kill, what the value of life is. I think there's almost an element of Hitchcockian vertigo in there too. So I think Decision to Leave could be one of those sleeper hits where everyone in about 3 or 4 weeks is going, have you seen Decision to Leave? As everyone gets frightened that it's going to win the Best Foreign Picture Oscar. And finally, My Policeman is out, which is the new Harry Styles film in which he plays, across a period of time, he plays an earlier iteration of a policeman whose homosexuality had to essentially be hidden, sublimated, denied as he fell in love with another man. And you know, we watched the trailer to this. This sounds like it could be an incredibly moving film. It also stars Emma Corrin as his wife. Early reviews coming through are saying it could have been great, but it isn't. We're probably going to go and see this. I mean, there's a huge following for Harry Styles. I think there's a bit of a bandwagon now sort of suggesting, yes, Harry's good, but he's not great. This could have been, this has all the earmarks of being one of those British films that could have had all sorts of awards garlanded on it, and could have been an important, if you like, profile of a difficult time in the story of homosexuality, legality of homosexuality and what have you, but apparently it potentially falls short. But if you're a Harry Styles fan and you fancy something that's quintessentially English, British, My Policeman could be the film for you. And that brings us to the end of an extraordinarily jam-packed Weekly Rushes, your rushed rush through all the weekly, or in this case fortnightly, movie and streaming news. Share your comments below, tell us what you think of some of the stories, and look forward to seeing you next week.
For more film and family fun, don't forget to click the subscribe button and make sure to click the bell to never miss an update.